Hey everybody, welcome to Performance Anxiety. This episode features Ev Gold of the legendary band Cinema, not the slightly lesser known band Circus Circus. Ev's band consists of him and his cousin Paul Claro. There's a 10-year age difference between them, but it melts as soon as they start playing. There's great stories of driving 12 hours for one gig, short-circuiting an entire German bar, and believe it or not, Hurricane Sandy. It's a high-energy show with a high-energy guy. Follow the guys at Cinema Band on all social media to buy their music and get tour info. Follow us at Performance ANX on Twitter and Instagram. Get merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. Subscribe, rate, review, and jump into this episode with Ev Gold of Cinema.
All right. Hello, everybody. This is Ev Gold of Cinema from Brooklyn, New York. You're about to listen to me converse with Mark on performance anxiety. Strap in. It gets a little crazy. Totally understand. That's a smart idea. I like where you're going with this.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's really a pleasure to have you on.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for taking the time, my man.
So you guys, you are in the band Circus, Cinema. You know, it's funny. I keep saying Circus, and that's not even close. That's an old Blackie Lawless band from Wasp.
Well, you start with the CI, so it's very close, and I don't have any issue at all with anything Wasp related or Blackie Lawless. I'm all good with that.
All right, good.
And we do get wild and crazy and intense, like some sort of really painful circus. It does happen to be cinema. Forgiven, forgotten. It's quite all right.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
I hate screwing that shit up. I hate it. Because
no worries.
I've literally spent days researching you guys and listening to your latest album, and I hate when I blow it like that. And just for the record, that's staying in the podcast. So
yeah, leave it in. Come on, this is the real deal stuff, man.
Exactly.
We want to preserve the moment. We don't need to edit this into the great sermon from the hilltop.
Exactly.
The bumps and the bruises are the parts that generally we remember. Usually it's the kind of screwy things that stand out. And I know whenever we're in the studio, one of the things we've come to find is there's no such thing as a mistake. If you find that you've done something that wasn't planned, happy accident oftentimes is benefited from being accentuated rather than buried. That's something we actually we learned through the producer who did our last few records. He didn't do the most recent one, which we're going to speak about, the CCXMD, the fifth album that we've made that's coming out in November. He didn't produce that one, but he produced the previous ones. He produced Man Bites Dog, which is a record we put out in 2017, and he produced A Night at the Fights, which was a record we put out in 2014, and that's a gentleman named Martin Bisi. And he's I can go ahead and say he's like an iconic producer. He's an extremely important sound maker, master manipulator here in the borough of Brooklyn. He's run BC Studios since, I believe, 1981. It's going on close to 40 years.
Jeez.
He's worked with, Sonic Youth, Swans, Helmet, Africa Bambaataa, Cop Shoot Cop, Herbie Hancock, Iggy Pop, Henry Rollins. Every and any important artist that you could possibly think of has passed through Martin's walls and had his sound captured by Martin's microphones. So that kind of that point I made earlier about leaving in the mistake or accentuating it, even because now we're bringing it up. We're really starting in the mistake. But I think it was Martin who had first turned us on to that idea of the first record we were doing with him, where we kind of felt like, something had happened that wasn't planned, which oftentimes we're very happy about, but it was in a really in a section we had refined over and over. And we had wanted Martin to edit it out right away. And Martin had kind of sold us on this idea, like, that's there for a reason. Let's use it.
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm glad you wound up stumbling on the Circus. It got me to talk a little bit about Martin right out of the gate, even though Martin didn't produce the new record. So it's already awkward. But that's how I do. I'm just going to talk and talk in circles. So hopefully you can rein me in at points.
No problem.
Because I'm kind of excitable.
Well, and we're here to talk about your whole career. We definitely wanted to talk about the new album, but I also want to know more about you guys, how you got started, and the journey that you guys have been on through Cinema, and not Circus, the Blackie Lawless pre-Wasp band.
Yes.
All right. So tell me a little bit about how you got started. Now, it's your duo, and it's with your cousin, right?
Yes.
All right, so how did you guys? There's a kind of an age gap. How did you guys hook up, and as a band?
I'll dive right in. There is an age gap. There's a 10-year age difference between my cousin Paul, the drummer, and myself, and that actually, that really, I think, winds up being really helpful in the long run. But I mean, I'll circle back around to that as it is. Yeah, there's a 10-year age gap. Essentially, I started my musical journey. Music became a very important part of my life at a really young age. It really started to serve some medicinal kind of qualities for me. The escape, the kind of the how do you say, like, the shield, the thing that kind of like gets the joyless moment joyful. Music was definitely something that was really, really important to me as a kid. With whatever growing pains that I experienced, music was a friend that I could rely on. So I started my journey in trying to get with whatever musicians I could find by the early 90s. I'm 41 years old. I was born in 1978. So
you're a baby.
Oh, well, Paul, who's 10 years Paul, the drummer who's 10 years my junior, is 31. So he's the real baby.
Man.
Yeah, insane, right? But
I'm only a few years older than you, so.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting, the thing with us too. Like, when we had first gotten together, Paul and I, it was 2008. And I was 29 and he was 19, and he was still underage in terms of the 21 and over clubs.
Right.
So we would get there early. We'd get all the stuff in, and we would just like keep him in the club, like just stay inside, don't go anywhere. That was like, for the first like 2 years of the band. And we were highly active right out of the gate. We started to tour a lot and learn by doing, pretty much. But let me backtrack a little bit. I'd started in the middle 90s. I'd started to seek out musicians. This was like pre-internet, social media, pre any of that stuff, pre-cell phones. You just kind of like went to school, and if there was another kid with long hair and like a Motorhead shirt, you had to try to angle in awkward conversation and see like maybe that person plays.
Hey, nice shirt. I like. And you play guitar, right?
Yes, I play guitar. And in the band, I play guitar and I sing.
Has that always been your instrument, or did you start off on anything else in school bands or anything like that?
What I first really, really started with was the idea of being a singer. I first recognized I felt like I had a voice. This was before I even touched an instrument. That kind of, like anyone else, singing along to music in the mirror, screaming in the shower, etc.
Yeah.
It was just there was this kind of connectivity that would occur where I could just it felt as if I could really harness a power there. I didn't know that I was particularly tuneful, although, we're all our own biggest fans. But, at a young age, at first, I really aspired mostly to be like a vocalist, lyricist, etc. So I would say that, in all honesty, my first instrument was definitely voice. And then in junior high school, I wound up in band class, one of those kind of elective, like 2 or 3 periods out of the day are like maybe music or gym, and then the rest of the regular curriculum. But yeah, I wound up in a band class, and I wound up playing trumpet. And at the time, it wasn't the most rock and roll instrument, and I didn't know about Miles Davis. I didn't know about jazz yet. But I thought, oh wow, well, I want to be a singer, and trumpet will help with my wind.
Oh, that's interesting.
I kind of took to it, and stuck with it a bit, but I was always kind of wanting to create a whole song, kind of like it started off with wanting to be a singer, feeling I had a voice, feeling I could write lyrics. Okay. Then I'm learning a little trumpet in school. I can't really put together a trumpet vocal piece, or I mean, maybe had I had the proper technology, like had I had like loop pedals and all kinds of stuff then and been way ahead of the curve, maybe I could have, but I really couldn't.
That would have been amazing.
It would have been, you know what? I'm thinking about it for future endeavor. Some sort of trumpet vocal album would be insane. But
my oldest daughter plays trumpet in a high school marching band. My youngest daughter plays French horn, and my son plays the tuba.
Oh wow! So
I got the whole brass section.
Yeah, you can put a whole brass display on, and anytime you want there. That's
this is a noisy house.
I was going to say earplugs.
Yeah.
Earplugs suggested. But yeah, no, you know what it was? I was yearning to be able to create like a song. So in my mind, I would need to acquire a guitar and learn how to play guitar. And I wound up asking for one of those birthdays, like 7th or 8th grade. And it sat there for a while. And then what happened was I reconnected with my father. He had been out of my life, and he drifted back into my life around the age of 14 in 1992. And for his profession, he was an artist, like a cartoonist, but he also had always been a guitar player. And so when when we reconnected, I drew upon the relationship rekindling by, basically throwing it out there, like, would you teach me to play? So I've never took like lessons per se from like someone that I went to on a weekly basis who was showing me theory and stuff. But my father, on like a weekly basis, we got together and he showed me basically the ins and outs of stuff. And then by showing me some songs to start with, Knocking on Heaven's Door, which at the time was, covered by Guns N' Roses, obviously originally the Bob Dylan song, etc. But I had like, I had like reference material right in my collection. If I didn't have the Dylan version, I had the Guns N' Roses version at that point, and it made me go back and look into Dylan. So it started to open me up immediately. And then also he taught me how to play Wild Horses by the Stones, which involved like a bar chord, which was like big to not just play open chords, but bar chords as well. So that was kind of like a bridge for me. And that also opened me up to checking out the Stones, and so then I just kind of ran away with it. Once I kind of knew some chords and knew how to play, it was just trying to figure out how to make up my own stuff with it, more or less. So yeah, that was kind of like how I stumbled into the guitar being my main instrument with vocals. I would then go on to bounce around in and out of bands for years and years. And now, as we mentioned earlier, my cousin Paul is 10 years younger than me. So in 1994, when I'm 16 starting my first band, he's 6. So he's very, he's like playing with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and like, in Dreamland. And so it's like at that point, obviously the age gap, it plays a big part in the story. Like we couldn't possibly play, but as
still too young to go into the clubs.
Yeah, still a little too young.
Yeah.
But as time would progress forward, it gave me the time over the next like 10 years or so to try to start bands with all the different people I would meet who could play and have the continued kind of like kind of not really getting to where I wanted to be with each one of those band experiences, but having it not kind of deter me, but making me see like, oh, it's a lot harder than I think. Like I used to think like, if everything lines up just right, then like a lot of people will find out about your music. And it's really not that. I've said this before. Really, it takes everything to line up just right, just for you to find another person or a few other people to even make some music, let alone try to then like spread it and share it and go and do the work of being an artist out in this world. It's really not that simple. And a lot of people are big in their passion for music, but when it comes down to actually like the brass tacks and really kind of grinding it out, people don't really stick around too much. And also I kind of had I really wanted to play music like in all 50 states. And I was that was a first goal, like just tour America. And most of the individuals that I was playing with were more like, they wanted to play because they loved it, but like something like that wasn't really in the cards for them. Playing local shows that we could get a lot of people to on some weekends, which is nice, which is great, was more of their prerogative maybe. Whereas
so you want to go 50 states, they're like happy staying in the 5 boroughs.
Yeah, and I'm not to say that there's anything wrong with either of those views, but as I was approaching the end of my 20s and the beginning of my 30s, it was becoming more of a real priority to me that I hadn't really done that yet with my music. I had played in bands on and off for 10 or 11 or 12 years.
Hmm.
I had played gigs that were fun. I had, done stuff, had a song on a compilation, all the
Oh,
mild
cool.
stuff that you do when you're in a band, when you're in bands as you're starting, but
Yeah.
hadn't done any of the stuff that I really, really, really dreamt of.
And
Hadn't like really pushed the envelope sonically and really been free with sound. Hadn't gone and like toured and gone out of state and gone all around. Hadn't done any of that stuff. And what happened was, in 2008, I was at a bit of like a crossroads where it was kind of like, make up your mind about what you're going to do time.
right.
In my mind, at least, I was in a relationship that was not really working, and we weren't really on the same page, me and my partner at the time, and everything in my life was kind of pointing in the direction of like music not really being the priority, and I wasn't happy with that, So I
Okay.
made a change, and I got out of that relationship, and I changed some other things in my life, and I decided, as my 20s were ending and my 30s were beginning, like I was going to make music my priority. That's it.
So
I wasn't necessarily going to.
you really walked the walk, man. You decided this is what I'm going to do. The relationship is over because it's not letting me do the music.
Yeah.
Wow.
It had to come to an end. It was an 8-year relationship, and it was the wrong relationship for a while, and it started to block me from doing things, and I'm sure it was blocking the other person from doing their things. So rather than just like kind of progress forward in a scenario that didn't work, made a major life change, got out of that, and right at that time, I started playing with Paul, and that was in the beginning of 2008, and within the first 6 months of Paul and I playing together, I would wind up meeting my current partner, who does all the artwork for the band and does so many other things in her life. She's a
Awesome.
designer and an artist herself. But like my life just started to open up in this different way as soon as Paul and I started playing together. 9 months into playing together, Paul and I had started the journey in touring and playing out of town. And then we really got bit by the bug by doing our first big out of town show, this Cincinnati show at the Midpoint Music Festival, which was like this 12-hour drive. We couldn't believe we were going to drive that far to do a gig. we had never done a tour yet. We had only done local stuff, so we didn't book any shows before or after. We like literally
Oh,
drove 12
wow.
hours to do a gig and back. But it was kind of like one of
That's
those like,
awesome, though.
yeah, it was one of those things. Like it was how we learned next time we should book a gig the night before, halfway along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And
Yeah.
B, it was also like we realized we had a lot of fun doing that crazy little endeavor. It didn't seem stupid or crazy or cockamamie. It seemed like right on the money. And we got bit by the bug. And that was like late '08. And we just kind of went haywire after that in terms of really throwing ourselves into it. In 2009, we did 100 gigs alone
Wow.
that year, which
Jeez.
is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we drove two different cars that we owned into the ground during that time, and then, but from doing all that running around, we started to wind up meeting people on our little voyages, and that's how we wound up working with Don Zientara, who is a producer based in Arlington, Virginia, right on the border of Washington, D.C. He runs Inner Ear Studios.
That is
Inner Ear
not too
Studios is.
far from where I'm sitting right now.
Oh, really? Well, Inner Ear Studios is where essentially almost everything that Discord Records ever put out was recorded. All the
Yeah.
Fugazi albums,
Yeah.
the Shudder to Think albums.
It's legendary.
I mean, everything. So we met Don out there along the way. We wound up recording with him in 2011. I mean, that was amazing. I mean, we wound up meeting Greg Ginn, the founder of SST
Yeah.
Records
I've
and
definitely got some
the
questions
leader
about
of
that.
Black Flag. And he ultimately wound up doing a bunch of touring with us, and we wound up on the Black Flag tour as time went on. I mean, all this stuff, I mentioned those two individuals, and I'm happy to elaborate further on them at some point if you have any direct questions. But I only
Yeah.
mention them because these were the fruits, to to use the term, these were the fruits of like climbing that tree, of like going where where you haven't gone, going far enough away from the shore that you can't see the shore anymore.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
not just playing the safe Saturday night, third weekend of the month. All our friends are going to be there. It's fish in a barrel gig.
Yeah.
It's like going out there into the world and meeting the experiences in the moment. That's what wound up yielding all these different opportunities for Paul and myself as Cinema, not Circus. So I couldn't resist
No,
that.
that's
I
totally
couldn't
fine.
resist it. It was just ripe. It was a
bit of low-hanging fruit, I'll tell you that.
Mark, you just nailed it. It was that bit of low-hanging fruit. I couldn't pass it. I'm sorry.
So how did you and Paul start playing together? There is a gap there. Were you guys close growing up, even with the age difference?
Well, I mean, the real deep story of how we started playing together, it's interesting. Paul's father, because he's my cousin, Paul's father is my uncle, which, that's how it works with, just basic family 101, in case anyone wasn't sure.
I'm glad we're doing that. Just laying the foundations there for
birds
and the bees.
Let me dial it in. So ultimately, Paul's father's my uncle. He's my mother's brother. My father met my mother because he was friends with Paul's father. So ultimately, back in like the 70s, there was a guy named Evan Gold, and that's my father. And there was a guy named Paul Claro, and that's Paul's father. They were really good friends. They played in a band together, and it wound up not really going anywhere. And ultimately, because they were friends, my father met his friend Paul's sister, Virginia, and boom, I was born. So
cool.
And then, as years went on, 10 years later, Paul had a son named Paul, and my cousin Paul was born. So now here we are in the same family, and it's a semi, somewhat of a musical family. As I said, my father and his father had played together in a band, etc. And so as time progresses on, and I'm 10 years older than him, obviously. So like we're at like holiday stuff together, but he's really young and I'm a teen. And then like I'm starting my first band and I could tell he's like kind of interested. And then I find out he's taking up drums and I'm really like, thrilled for him. And there's, we do have some track of each other as time moves forward, but there isn't really an idea that we'd play together. And what kind of ties it together is this. In 2007, it was a year before we started the band together. My uncle, Paul's father, who he's always, like I said, he's been a musician on and off all along, his whole life as well. He had finally decided to take some of his songs, my uncle Paul's father, to a studio as I have to keep on clarifying this. It's like, what is going on in this world?
Which Paul, which guy?
Yeah, like there's a lot.
Yeah.
So my uncle Paul's father, I'll repeat, had decided to take some of his songs into a studio to record.
Before we go any further, their band wasn't Circus, was it?
You know what? That was that was a nice callback there. I like that. I like how you walked that back in. I like it. It wasn't Circus, but oh my God, if it was, we would have just hit jackpot.
That would have been amazing.
It would have been jackpot. But anyway, so my Uncle Paul had decided in fall of 2007 that he wanted to go into a studio and record some of his songs that he had written over the years after not like doing music for a while.
Okay.
And he had asked me and his son Paul if we'd go with him to contribute, like to back up the songs.
Oh, cool.
And because we both love him and we're all family, we was like, yeah, let's do this, sure.
Yeah.
And essentially coming together to do that project, which was kind of like a passion project for my uncle. In the studio, Paul and I, we realized there, like, ooh, hang on, there's a bit of chemistry here because we kind of didn't rehearse this stuff with my uncle / his father, but we could kind of listen and intuitively play along by just hearing the song, like just bits of the song. Like it really kind of came together nicely. And the little recording that my uncle made sounded good and he was proud of it. And moreover, I started to very quickly, the whole 10-year difference in our age was peeled away, I think, on both my behalf and Paul's behalf. Maybe Paul had thought Ev's a little bit older. It would be cool to play with him, but I'm not sure. And I definitely thought he's 10 years younger. I don't know about this, but once we went into the studio that day, we knew when we walked away from the studio, something was definitely there. So about 6 months later was when I had kind of hit that point in my life where I knew that I needed to pursue my music, with the ferocity I had not done yet since.
Right.
And at that point, I asked Paul if he was interested in jamming, and he was like, "What were you waiting for?"
Wow.
Yeah. So, and we got together, and when we got together, we had intended to, eventually find a bass player. We weren't just going to automatically be a duo because we're cousins, but we got together for the first time in a room, January 11th, 2008, and we plugged everything in, and without much conversation, we just kind of spilled into this really natural jam that felt really good. And suddenly, the space that we thought needed to be filled by other instruments and other individuals seemed to all evaporate with the energy and the chemistry that would happen when Paul and I would play. So we decided that night that we were going to be the core of the band would be that we're a duo of cousins. This is what we do, and that's when I started to build my pedal board, and he started to arrange his drums a little different so we can continue to fill space and eat up air and area where other musicians might contribute. So that was how the start came to be.
Okay.
Paul had been playing drums for a while before that, and I had been doing my thing for a while, but it was just like the right time and circumstance had to occur, and that was in January of 2008.
Well, the sound of the band is incredibly dense and ferocious, and I can't believe it's only two people making all that noise. Was it always the intent to go that route? I mean, the sound, not necessarily just the duo, since you just explained that wasn't the case, but was the sound always going to be the sound that it is now, the sound that it's developed into?
Well, I'm going to say that, in terms of the overall sound and what we do, luckily it continues to reveal itself to us. So it continues to evolve in such a way that I can't say that we knew on day one that we were going to sound exactly like we do. I can say that the attitude that has prompted us to sound like we do was there. And that was an attitude of like, together we feel really strong. We feel kind of fearless. We could go anywhere with this. And also fixed into that attitude, stemming off of that feeling was we observed other duos, or some of the other duos at the time. This is there are plenty of duos now, but going back 12 years, not that there were plenty of duos then, but it seemed as though most duos, they would kind of choose a lane and go for it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I feel, choose a certain shtick or a certain genre or a certain sound and own that thing, and you got it. You're good. What we really wanted to do, it was a conscious decision. We did not want to limit ourselves as a duo to just like being like, yo, we can do a heavy blues thing, great. Let's just do that. Like,
Black Keys sound.
Yeah, exactly. We can do an absolute straight up heavy metal insane thing like I don't know who. I'm just saying like Jucifer, right. Or like Lightning Bolt. I mean, these are all amazing duos, but we definitely said like we want to be able to achieve all the stuff that a 5 or 10 or 6 or 4 or any piece band could achieve. We don't want to be limited to like, well, we don't do that kind of thing, And so, we definitely, in terms of the sound being what it is, it continues to grow and evolve. But yes, we came out of the gate with this idea, like we want to be able to achieve what any other band could achieve and do so by just having it be 2 guys, 2 heartbeats, 4 eyes, 4 pairs of hands, the whole 9 yards, however you want to do that math, deduce it down. It wasn't until, not to kind of branch off, but the new album is kind of us in a trio format, and us in a trio iteration, if you'd
Okay.
use that term. Well, we have a guest on the new album, so
Okay.
that's kind of well, we have a guest. Yeah, that's not brand new, as he guested for a few songs on the last album, but this might make some better sonic sense to you, depending upon I guess maybe this state of your getting to know Cinema. I don't know how far you've dived back into, or dove rather back into the catalog, but this album is the first one that includes like wind instrumentation
Yes.
on the full album, on every song. We had a guest on our 2017 album, Man Bites Dog, named Matt Dario. He is he's just a wind master. He's a reed connoisseur. He's just like, I mean, his bag of tricks is extremely varied. All these interestingly named wind instruments, not just, it's the saxophone is when he wants to get boring.
Oh,
He
wow.
has lots of different, stuff that he's collected over time. Matt, he's in a number of different outfits. Maybe the most well-known one that he's in is one called the Klezmatics. They're a world band, Grammy award-winning act.
Wow.
He's also in he has his own a couple of his other own bands. He has Disastro Totale, I believe, and that's with a accordion player named Yuri, who's in Gogo Bordello. And then he
Oh, I know
also has
them.
Paradox Trio is another one of his bands, which actually is a quartet that is just an absolutely potent force of musicians. Yeah,
Wow.
Dario is really interesting. So we came across each other through good mutual friends about maybe 5 years or so ago, and it was right around the time when Paul and I were first starting to open up to the idea of potentially opening that door to a collaborator, to a third point on the triangle, or on the Triforce, or a third wheel on the trike. We were just kind of starting to open up to that idea.
Okay.
Yeah. So ultimately, when we got together with Matt, Matt comes more from the jazz and world, music scene. So his approach, is one of like, we'll show up and play. Not like sit down and write it out. Let's just show up and play. And we really liked that idea, because improv has been a very, very, very big part of what Paul and I do as Cinema since the beginning.
I've seen that you've described the band as punk improvisation, and it has, in other publications, the band has been described as experimental punk.
Yeah.
So now, for me, I'm not huge into punk. So I don't. To me, punk is usually ends up being a shorter song. So how did you guys decide to stretch it out and become punk improvisation, and how did you make those things work together?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Well, I think with in terms of the punk stuff, because I guess maybe it's one of those things where it's like separating the term punk from actual, like, what's associated as punk music.
Right, the
maybe.
punk ethos
It's
from
kind
the
of,
music itself.
yeah, like the punk ethos is what I think it really is, what's associated a bit more with our overall approach, in that, like, rules are stuff that we do not play by. So I think it's a little bit less like the idea of punk rock, like Ramones, which is, of course, something I think of immediately with punk rock,
Exactly.
which is short, fast, really cool songs, or even hardcore punk, which is even shorter. Of course, we're fans of those. We love those. But those things do fall pretty far sonically from what we actually do at our core. Whereas I feel like the spirit of those things, which is just like individuality and being unique. And again, like, I mean, not just breaking the rules to break them, but not breaking them because, like, who needs these rules? They're not even going through your mind,
Right.
So I think the punk ethos is really kind of really has its fingerprints all over what we do.
Yeah, especially the do-it-yourself part of punk.
Yes, 100%. I mean, the whole hardcore movement and Black Flag and SST Records and Fugazi and Minor Threat and Discord Records, and those being started by individuals in those bands who like built it from the ground up, the do-it-yourself stuff. That was, everything that we bred all of our early goings on kind of lives there. That kind of like believe in yourself and do it. Don't sit around and wait. Get up off your couch and meet the moment. The moment ain't going to meet you on the couch.
Yeah, exactly.
We learned that from those bands and we love those bands. But in terms of our overall sound and stuff, and it being kind of experimental punk or experimental or punk improv or jazz punk or all the different things that I've heard it be called, and I've even maybe made use of some of those terms myself. I think it's really kind of like all that stuff is just shorthand for the amount of freedom that we're willing to put right in the middle of what we do, and the amount of vulnerability that we're not scared to share. I think that's kind of stuff that really speaks to me in music. It's like less about polish and more about like, does this thing move me? I think when Paul and I first started playing, the whole improv thing was just, we found we were able to really communicate with the instruments. I mean, it's just this thing where like, he's a really great listener as a drummer. He's a really, really great writer as a drummer. He's a very lyrical drummer, Paul. He's just can kind of keep beat while shifting in and out of area. And it's just, I haven't played or heard many drummers like him. I'm fortunate to play with him. So he really opens up this door for me to not worry so much and explore however I would so see fit. And the beautiful thing being cousins and being like each other's like cheerleader and biggest fan, and also like pretty much best friend because we've been through so much in doing this, we don't put limitations on the other. I've been in other bands where like egos and attitudes and like, well, that part should be a little bit shorter, like that stuff, like get out of my eyes with that. Get out of my face with that. We don't deal with that. We're not aiming for something. We're doing what comes to us, So I mean, like, I think it kind of flows through us in such a way that it can't help but come out a little wacko, crazy, and insane, not unlike life. And, and it has like, like I said, that punk ethos, that quality, that tagline that's on it. I would never here's a little anecdote. Mm-hmm. We wound up on tour. We were invited to open up
it just
Black
happened.
Flag. Yeah, I woke up in Kentucky on the third leg of a Deep Purple reunion tour. Richie Blackmore wouldn't do it. Maybe it was Steve Morse on guitar. So the roadie called. No, it's not like that. Let's get back to reality. Sorry.
No problem.
So in 2014, we were invited to do a 55-date tour with Black Flag. They were doing a reunion of sorts. Greg Ginn essentially was going to be the sole member, and there was a new singer and new rhythm section. So it wasn't so much a reunion as a dancing out the name of the band with the main guy. So all good. Not gonna, I was very happy to be a part of the tour, proud to have done our best and played really hard on the tour and made good impressions. So I can't really, really go out there on record with anything else other than love for it all. So, that's what it was. Essentially, it was, the sole member of, the sole creator of Black Flag and some other people. And we were on that tour all across the country, nationally, opening. And it was a great, great experience. Now, as I say that, we had been around the country before and we had been to a lot of places before, but this really brought us all the way fanned out and also brought us into playing some rooms that were way larger than rooms that we would play on our own. So we were grateful for that. And it put us in this really cool scenario of we'd be in some places where they've never heard of us at all. And they're standing there with their arms folded, looking at us like, who are these two guys from Brooklyn opening up for Black Flag?
Places like Kentucky.
Yeah, sure. Places like Kentucky, places like actually the story I'm about to tell you is about Louisiana.
Oh, cool.
And and I have no problem with any of these states. I've had great times in Kentucky and Louisiana and a lot of other places in America. Most of them, whenever I go somewhere to play music, I wind up interacting with a counterculture that's filled with people that I learn a lot from and people that are generally pretty giving and kind. Punks and metal people wind up being like some of the nicest, kindest people you'll ever meet. period. But so anyway, we wind up. I wake up on this tour. I wake up on the tour bus, night 62.
Yeah. I don't know where I've been for the 61 nights beforehand.
Yeah, I've seen a million faces. I rocked about 7. So no, but anyway, so what happens is here we are, this crazy punk, metal, experimental, jazz, gypsy, freak, whatever the hell they call us. I don't even know what it is at this point. Improv, wacko jacko. I don't know.
I think cinema is just going to be a genre in of itself.
It could be. I mean, to me, it sounds like mainstream top 40, but that's just me. But anyway, so we're in Louisiana, and it winds up being it's a great show. It's not in New Orleans. Forgive me for forgetting the city at the moment off the top of my head. I want to say Lafayette, but I know there's a Lafayette, Indiana. I'm not sure if there's a Lafayette, Louisiana.
I can't recall.
But anyway, I think it might have been Lafayette, to be honest with you. It was a big college town. We were playing this nice 1,000-seat hall, etc. So we go and we do our thing, and now, like I said, we're this weird wacko band. There's a punk sensibility, sure, but like Black Flag is one of the bands that people, when they think of punk, they think of like later Black Flag definitely expanded and definitely grew and got strange and very much influenced us, late Black Flag. But early Black Flag, people think of the short, quick songs. They think of punk. They imagine the opening band is going to be something that's quote unquote punk. So what happened was, we go, we do the set in Louisiana, and this is well into the tour, and we've been getting received really well all over, and we were received really well in Louisiana. It was this great thing, like I said, where people are kind of like staring at us like, what are you going to do? And we got the chance to show them exactly what we were going to do. So it was really kind of this really fun, like little bit of a sparring match each night where, like, would we win them or would we not? So it was really fun. And we learned a lot of our stagecraft via the performance anxiety that's involved with that.
Ooh,
See, I'll
nice.
drop in the title.
I like it.
I will drop the title. Elegant, low-hanging fruit right there.
Exactly. Anyway, subtle. So, nobody's going to notice that.
Yeah. But anyway, so our thing every night was this. As soon as we finished our set, we drag our stuff to the side of the stage immediately so it's out of the way, and we would beeline to our merch table while we're still sweating and like still like affected the people that are there, and like pray to sell our merch, because doing a 55+ show tour means you quit your day job to do that, didn't you? Oh yeah, that's part of what Paul and I did to go on tour for 4 months with Black Flag. You quit your job. Yeah. So, and something that maybe in 1995, that's like, oh, quit your job, go on a tour, you're going to get somewhere. In 2014, yeah, try it. Let's see what your level of commitment is then. Yeah. But anyway, so here we are. We're relying on making money off the merch. We get a fee each night that we get paid for being on this tour, and our travel and our expense, our sleeping expenses are taken care of via the tour. But we have to make our money on merch. So we run to that merch table every night, and we are ready to become happy, smiling salesmen to anyone who will come over and say, yo, that was cool. So in Louisiana, we run straight to the merch table. And now, like, we're dripping. We just finished playing. I mean, and we really try to leave it all up there. We try to play every gig like it's our last. We're not just like up there strumming along like, oh, tonight's the night, it's chill. Like, we're trying to literally... We're hoping one of us ends our life that night on stage, by the strength of the performance alone, not by some sort of crazy murder. But we're trying to push it. So we run. Yeah, please, no murder.
No,
Save
please.
that. Oh, God. But anyway, we run to the merch table, and, we sell some merch, and it's going well. And then this guy comes to the merch table. He walks straight up to us, and, like, looks us square in the face, and he's like, y'all call yourself punk? And I was like, I just was like, excuse me? He's like, you guys call yourself punk rock. I want to know why. And I'm sorry if I'm not doing the proper accent. I don't mean to offend anybody. I don't really have any certain good accent down to impersonate a jerk off. So. Just think of your best jerk-off accent and apply it here.
All right.
So, but, this guy, he wanted to take his time to come over and make sure he got his point across to the opening band that he thought it was fraudulent in some way, shape, or form, that the word punk was even associated with us because what he had seen wasn't punk, etc. So for individuals who are kind of stuck in that kind of small box, I mean, there wasn't much that we could offer him. I thanked him for his comments. I assured him that I never at any point got on a soapbox and screamed out that I am punk rock and that we are punk rock music, that maybe it's been used to describe us along the way, but I'm already getting too far into a conversation with a jerk off.
Right.
So it's just, you know what I mean? But like, we've had that kind of like, what? No matter where we go or what we've done, I mean, and that's why it's like if you stick with one genre, it serves you. Like if we would just stick with metal type stuff, then all the metal zines and metal peeps and metal labels would want to put us out. But half the metal people are like, this isn't metal. But then the punk people are like, this isn't punk. And these jazz people are like, is this jazz? So we find that, as long as we're making the music that we know we care about, then we don't care about anyone else's need to label it or try to figure out what it is. But we have found that it's been confusing at times to some. We're sorry if you don't get the message. we're still figuring it out as we go.
See, that's the beauty of it, though. It's ever evolving, and this, to me, in going back and listening to some of your back catalog, there, it seems like the music on the new album is less structured than some of the earlier stuff that you've done. Was that done on purpose, or is that just? And I guess it leads to another question that I have, which is: do you guys go into the studio with songs pre-planned and demoed, and you've got an idea, or is there a lot of experimentation in the studio?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for that. And a good discerning ear, because undoubtedly the new album, the CCXMD album,
which is an interesting title. I want to ask you about that eventually, because it looks like Roman numerals, but it doesn't work out as Roman numerals. I think
exactly. It looks like Roman numerals, but it don't work out.
No, it comes out to like negative 1290.
Yeah. I wish that it was a play on some sort of insane ancient Fibonacci sequence number equal to pi times 11. The name is a play on our name, Cinema, and Matt Dario, the third wheel on our trike for this endeavor, being that he was a guest on our 2017 album for a song or two, but we invited him for this album to be a guest on the entire album. So it was kind of for the first time taking a swing at making a record in trio form, and just allowing ourselves as Cinema to suddenly have that kind of open door of like, maybe there's an album where we have a few other players with us. I know Michael Gira of Swans. He's in a point where he's changing the people that are in Swans right now, but it's still Swans. I know that back 10 years ago, I went to see Modest Mouse, and that tour, Johnny Marr was in the band for that one album, So by no means do I mean to mention titans like Gira or Johnny Marr and Modest Mouse, but we did want to kind of get into that area, or even like similar to like Melvins. They'll have like different bass players, or they'll have like maybe one album where they have two bass players, a la one of their more recent albums. So we kind of wanted to get into that area of like Cinema is this thing that not only can it not be defined by genre, but you're not really even sure what's going on. We kind of like creating that kind of mystique. I mean, mystique is definitely gone in the music world nowadays. You can kind of go online and find out every single thing about the band before you even hear a song, to the point that you might not even need to listen if you found out enough of the information because maybe you turned off. Back in the day,
like you didn't. Point.
Yeah, back in the day, you didn't know.
No.
I didn't know. I heard Sex Pistols when I was a little kid. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I couldn't just look up Johnny Rotten, a.k.a. John Lydon, and he's this and he's that, and he's married to this, and he's this, and he's this, and he's this tall, and he wears this size pants, and he had a shoe size that was this. In 7th grade, he had that. Like, by this point, I don't care. I don't care anymore. But anyway, we kind of wanted to, kind of reinstate that element for us, at least, of some sort of mystique, like you're not really sure what's coming. And so to get to kind of answering the question, on all the previous records before now, we had undoubtedly spent high time refining ideas, high time working on songs, editing things down. Editing when you're young as a band, it's hard to self-edit. You really believe
I can
every
imagine.
single song, every lyric is great.
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, editing is important. Having conversations. Having this, having that. So the previous albums before this definitely were chock full of that kind of process, undoubtedly. This one was the first one where we made a concerted decision to eschew that
Nice.
approach. Yeah, I'll use something there. I'm trying to just to sidestep that approach entirely. We wanted to capture what happened that night, and if we felt there was a musical value, then it was going to be released, and if we didn't, then it would be shelved. But it was worth doing an entire gamble on a session. That's how we kind of looked at it this way. We had played with Matt Dario a number of times, basically doing gigs as just entirely improv. Like, the gig is on the 26th at 9:00. Are you down? Okay, we're down. We'll see you there. And we just would show up and play. We had done that with him a couple of times. So we said, you know what? Let's attempt to capture this. And if we don't, we'll know that we didn't, because it's not going to really hit that spot. I mean, when you're the creator, like, it's really hard to give birth to the piece as it is, even when you've spent time and effort and like real thought and analyzation, mind-boggling, juice on it. It's hard to part with it and put it out when you've really refined it, written it. I mean, when you've just done it in the moment, some people might think of it in a more dismissive way, like, well, what is that? Like, what kind of work is that? But we weren't going to release it unless we really felt that it kind of touched on some sort of paths and like value that we needed the music to trot upon and kind of get to. And we sat on the recording for a while. We were a little bit unsure.
Really?
Because we came from that. We come from a world of most of the records, are based more on structured songwriting. With that said, each one of our previous records does include an entirely improv piece. If you do go back and listen to anything, we have something called the Shiner series. If you go to Man Bites Dog, there's Shiner number 5. On A Night at the Fights, it's Shiner number 4. On Manic Children and the Slow Aggression, is Shiner number 3.
Right, yeah.
Every album, we do a song that we create right then, and we call it Shiner, and we number it.